So in this video, I just want to talk about the loss of older trees around the world and sort of the impact it has on climate change. So older carbon-rich tropical forests continue to be lost at a frightening rate, according to satellite data. So in 2019, an area of primary forest the size of a football pitch was lost every 6 seconds. The University of Maryland study of trees more than 5 meters, so trees above a certain height. So Brazil accounted for a third of this, its worst loss in 13 years, apart from huge spikes in 2016 and 2017 from fires. And so there are some theories around, the Brazil sort of the tree loss, which is Bolsonaro doesn't care and he wants to use the land for other purposes. And very short-sighted of him, but obviously he's a corrupt despot, so who cares? However, Indonesia and the Democratic Republic of Congo both managed to reduce the tree loss. Meanwhile, Australia saw a six-fold rise in tree loss following the dramatic wildfires of late 2019, and I think the fires continued into 2020, and feels like a long time ago that happened, to be honest, when everyone's saying, pray for Australia, donate money and things like that, and it feels like years ago that happened now. As well as storing massive amounts of carbon, primary tropical rainforests, where trees can be hundreds or even thousands of years old, are home to species such as orangutans and tigers. So there's a secondary causal effect of getting rid of these trees, which is animals such as orangutans and obviously the magnificent beasts, which are tigers, are losing their homes, and it's a sad blight on an indictment of humanity, I guess, that we're happy to allow deforestation to happen. Just for land and get rid of animals as majestic as the tiger and obviously animals like orangutans. The tropics have lost 11.9 million hectares, 46,000 square miles of tree cover. The study found 3.8 million in older trees, primary forest areas, the third highest loss of primary trees since 2000, and a slight increase on 2018. So we can see that trees are forests are getting burnt up here, and it's just not looking good, especially given how much carbon these trees can take out of the environment. And one of the reasons, so here we have a quote from Francis Seymour: the level of forest loss that we saw in 2019 is unacceptable, and one of the reasons that it's unacceptable is that we actually already know how to turn it around. If governments put into place good policies and enforce the law, forest loss goes down. But if governments relax restrictions on burning and are signaling that they intend to open up indigenous territories for commercial exploitation, forest losses go up. And so what this professor is, he's not a professor, Francis Seymour, is basically saying it's down to the governments who are allowing this. And you can see some pretty horrible pictures here of forests being burnt. Speaking at the losses in Brazil, Michaela Weiss, I think that's how you pronounce that, from Global Forest Watch said, we also noted that several hotspots of primary forest loss within indigenous territory, especially the state of Para, which were linked to the land grabbing and to mining. So you can see that is blatantly done for things that are short-sighted as mining, but also land grabbing. So if that's a problem with just not having enough housing, or if that's just due to people going after cheaper land, essentially, these incursions are particularly worrisome, given that indigenous people have been some of the best conservers of forests in Brazil and around the world. So that by burning out forests, you're getting rid of the the indigenous population and replacing them with more sort of industrial housing. And the indigenous people are the best at preserving the land, because they respect the land that they live on, essentially, and they're not going to do stupid stuff like this. Indonesia, so these particular Indonesia, however, saw losses remain at historically low levels for the third year in a row, thanks to, it seems, strong government action. So shouts out Indonesia for this. One of the good things that they've done. Keeping the forest intact. And Liz Goldman of the Global Forest Watch said a number of policies in Indonesia have contributed to the story, including increased enforcement to prevent forest fires and land clearing. So what they do is these countries, they allow forest fires to happen, and then once the forest fires happen, it's easier to clear out the land. And so you don't necessarily have to do anything. Government doesn't have to do anything, but they can, if you strip out the police force or the fire brigade, then it makes forest fires much harder to stop, and that's possibly one of the things happening in these countries, Indonesia aside. And Colombia, which has seen tree losses surge since the peace treaty came out into force in 2016, saw a 35% drop in primary forest loss compared to 2018. So Colombia, seemingly some sort of post-agreement, have seen a loss of tree deforestation, which is great. But Bolivia saw 80% of losses greater than any country after fires set for agriculture clearing spread out of control. And so by using fires in order to clear out certain parts might not be the best idea. And nearly 12% of the God, I don't know how to pronounce that. Chinquito dry forest in East Bolivia, home to indigenous peoples, jaguars and giant armadillos and tapirs have been burnt. And so I don't know when this was done in Bolivia. I don't know if this was done post coup or after, before the coup. But Bolivia, sort yourself out. You've got a lot of problems to solve, and this is evidently one of them. And so what we can tell from this article is that the loss of these older trees is a big problem. And as we move into a world that is becoming not just warmer but more erratic, we can see that global warming, climate change can cause massive snowstorms. If anyone remembers the Beast from the East, which was the massive snowstorm in the UK, I think it was about two years ago. That was caused because of ice melting in another part of the world. And so it's not just, obviously, that's why they changed it from global warming to climate change, because people are like, oh, well, it's snowing, how could climate change exist? Or how is global warming a thing when it's cold outside? That's why, because it's not just warm weather you're going to get, it's going to be colder weather as well. So the weather's going to become far more erratic. And that's the point. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, but the vast majority of scientists agree that climate change exists and it's a big problem. And so look, I'm going to leave it there. This is clearly losing older trees is a big problem. Brazil, sort yourself out. You're a mess. And I'm going to leave it there. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.